put on a YouTube. And so she watched about 3 clips and she goes, oh my God, he's just like one of us.
The picture that is in his head, he transforms it into words and relays that picture into my brain.
So we had a little change in lineup. Trevor's now behind the camera where he belongs. So
Yes.
we are the Front Page Pass, brought to you by Word Journeys.
Well, welcome everyone to Front Page Pass, presented by Word Journeys. And I'm your co-host, Bob Yealing. And this is a very, very special show for us. And for me particularly, this is the 25th anniversary of Word Journeys. We incorporated 25 years ago on Halloween. Mm-hmm. And so for the next year, we're going to be doing 25-year promotions and all sorts of other things for Word Journeys with our clients, with events we go to, with conferences we're at, and so forth. So we'd like everyone to stay tuned to that through our newsletter and through future podcasts. And along with me for the ride on this special day of reminiscing and talking about the last quarter century in the publishing industry are my co-host, Lexa Black, our podcast producer, Trevor Faith, and our operations manager, who's joining us on the desk today to talk writing, Erin James.
For the first time?
The first time.
Hey, Erin, welcome to the show. And welcome to the show, Trevor. And yeah, Trevor's been the kind of the magic behind the scenes, behind the camera for this podcast so far. And it's been really fun. You know, it's just been so much fun to be able to present writing in a talking format, I guess it were. So anyways, first of all, I just want to share with everybody how Word Journeys began real briefly, and then we'll get into some of the experiences and talk about the business. So 25 years ago, I had not yet entered the book space. I was the associate publisher for a magazine publishing group in Tampa, Florida. And still in Tampa at that time, magazine publishing, especially commemorative titles, so-called one-offs, was thriving. It was just thriving. So there was constantly, there's constantly side work to be had, and writers were coming to me constantly to help them edit their magazine pieces or to edit magazines entirely. So that's how Word Journey started. It started out providing services to magazine publishers and writers. Shortly after that, I started moving more into book publishing space. And by 1999, so the 4th year of Word Journeys, we had pretty much migrated 3/4 of the way over to books. And that was just editing manuscripts, writing book proposals, and teaching at writers' conferences. And since that time, Word Journeys has mostly been not really a solopreneurship, because I've always worked with subcontractors, but really as far as day-to-day operations, one person, sometimes 2, with freelancers. And then, we obviously continue to work with freelancers all over the world. And so moving fast forward 20 years to the pandemic, and the pandemic hit, all of a sudden, everybody that was unable to write books because they were so busy in their careers or their lives suddenly had all this free time. They were shut down, they couldn't go to work, and they started writing books, a lot of books. And we took off. I mean, we took off last year, really. We greatly expanded our breadth of services. We greatly expanded our client base, and we greatly expanded our team. So now we're 5 strong plus freelancers. And the beauty about it is now, and Alexa will talk more about this, and now Word Journeys, we're a 360-degree book services provider. We do everything that has to do with books.
Yeah, absolutely. Marketing, PR, design, for the most part. Just essentially everything.
Editorial development, evaluating manuscripts. So.
Mm-hmm. The entire gambit, for the most part. Like you said, 360-degree angle.
A lot of big words.
That's why you're behind the camera, okay? Yeah. I'm playing.
We know where to put people, right? And then we'll talk about things that didn't even exist 25 years ago. Like, really, email was just starting out. The internet was just starting out. There was no such thing as streaming. There was no such thing as being able to do your own video book trailer.
Mhm.
Those were done by studios only.
And a lot of
Um,
a lot of things that came out, during the pandemic, for example, virtual signings and whatnot, conferences, etc. I mean, we've
Conferences.
talked about how
Yes.
that's really changed a lot about the publishing landscape, and that's kind of a silver lining that it's come out of the entire thing for the publishing industry, at least, is all those really innovative ways that we can
Yes.
utilize technology in ways that we never have before.
yeah, and to that, our guest last week, Desiree
Yes.
Duffy, has definitely the preeminent book, virtual online only book conference and festival. It's called the Book Fest, and it's thebookfest.com for those that are interested in signing up. It'll be held next weekend, October uh, 23rd and 24th.
Hmm.
So sign up quickly if you want to get in there. Um, yeah. So and one of the greatest joys, well, I think the greatest joy, even more so than all the books you've had a pleasure to work on, and I'll work on, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is being able to teach and mentor. I grew up in a teaching family. My mother, grandmother, great grandmother, at least, probably further generations back, were all teachers, and they're my daughter's a teacher. Um, they're just lots of teachers in our family. So I taught college writing for a number of years, but through working with Word Journeys, I've been able to teach at writers conferences for the last 20 years, so that's teaching professional writers who are already pretty good at what they do, how to make it in the book world. And then teaching the various parts of the writing craft. And that's how I met Alexa, actually.
Yes.
Alexa, once upon a time, which would be about roughly half of her lifetime ago, Alexa, Alexa was a young, super uber shy
Oh, yes.
teenage urban fantasy writer with a huge gift for writing. And she was the youngest person that would come into the workshops that I used to teach in Marion, Kentucky. And she just sat in the back of the room, wrote, 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 wrote. And so I mentored her for a while. And then we lost track of each other. What kind of happens? I was working in another part of the country. And then 10 years later, we reconnected, and lo and behold, she had spent a decade in the publishing industry already. So we figured out a way to work together.
Exactly, yeah. And then we kind of
That's awesome.
consolidated everything, there at the last. And that was a great learning experience, too. I mean, you didn't cut me any slack because we went to writers' conferences and everything. Like you said, I was shy. So it was very difficult being in the hot seat talking to literary agents and et cetera at the time. But it was a great learning experience.
That's
Well,
right.
you never know.
You came up to Indiana, Bloomington, didn't you?
I did, yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And then there
yeah.
was another one that I
Because
had
I
went
had
to.
you. Because I had you within a meeting with Verna Dreisbach.
That's who yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, who was my
Okay.
agent
Good
at the
memories.
time. Right, right.
Yeah. So it was
Yeah,
definitely a great learning experience back then. And like you said, a decade later, here we are working together. Because
and
that really
that's one.
helped catapult
Yeah,
me into the publishing industry. I just kind of fell in love with it and, started taking on my own projects, worked for a few publishers here and there, and did a ton of freelance work. And then we got together again, and now we have a whole
And we
team
have a
from
whole
it.
now we have
So
a whole team.
it's
That's
pretty
right.
awesome how it all evolved,
Well,
honestly.
what's really fun for me being out in the publishing world is, Word Journeys is 25. I've been at this now
Hmm.
45 years. Believe it or not, it's been 45 years since I started writing professionally, which I don't believe, but that's what the calendar says, anyways. And and yet in the publishing world, we're perceived as this young, vibrant,
Hmm.
hip, dynamic business, just because we're so fresh and young. And that's the beautiful thing about being able to retool and be at this point
Hmm.
in my career, is that I get to work with young people and mentor to whatever degree I can to help, but mostly learn everything, like
Hmm.
different forms of communication, how things are done now, et cetera, et cetera.
And you stay
And
really up
that,
to date on trends, as far as
yeah,
just the literary world is concerned. And I feel like that's, like you mentioned, that's where we all kind of, merge our skills together. I mean, you're bringing in your wisdom from decades of experience. And then, I guess, but as you said, we kind of keep it, fresh and
Yeah.
vibrant. And even more so, with our youngest person at Word Journeys, Destiny. I mean, she's
Yes.
on to trends that
Yes.
I'm not even caught up with yet. So, you
As
know,
far as far as myself, I'm more of the organizational and planner of the group. I keep both of you creative geniuses on
On
task
task.
every
Yes, you
day,
do.
day in and day out. But I thoroughly enjoy what I do.
She
Yeah,
cracks
and
a
you're
whip.
also and Erin, you're also the mother of two young
Exactly.
girls, and one of the things I really pride our I take great pride in that we do that we'll talk about here in a minute
Mhm.
is we're able to work in any genre, nonfiction or fiction, for any genre at all. I mean, there's some that I like more than others, and fortunately one of them that's not my all-time favorite is Alexa loves it, so that works out perfectly. But not only do we do the genres, but we can work in all age groups. So and one of the things we've been able to do because of the two of you is children's books. So we've gone from really not having any involvement at all in children's books to being able to market, promote, publicize, produce and design, and also design children's book covers, which
Or
Alexa,
illustrate.
I'll have you talk about because
Illustrations.
you're an old hand at that. So I wanted to just kind of give it over to the two of you to talk about children's literature a little bit and just what it's meant to you to be a part of it.
It's been a fun process for me because, to be quite honest, that's the kind of my stomping grounds, more or less. That's really what I started out doing. When I switched out of journalism and decided to go more so into the literary world in my early 20s. That was probably something that really stuck with me. One of the first books that I ever illustrated was a children's book. And I've done quite a few since then. So, like I said, it's been a fun transition for me because that was where I really started out initially. So just having that experience and being able to bring that to the table and bring that into Word Journeys is really cool, and it's definitely one of my favorites outside of medieval fantasy, which I'm obsessed with. But that's definitely one of my favorites. It's kind of a contrast there between two genres, but it's been a lot of fun, and just working with the children's book authors that we
Yes.
have.
Kathy Miller in particular, she has a great series out, and we actually used my twin daughters as her beta readers. And at the progression that they're at right now with their reading levels, it was a perfect starting point for them.
Mm-hmm.
It gave them a sense of what reading was all about. They were able to enjoy the story, the illustrations that also went along with the text, and it provided to be great material for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're able to kind of, like you said, beta readers,
Yeah.
you're able to test it out in advance,
Yes.
how kids are going to be receptive to the work.
Yes.
And it also helped, as far as the writing is concerned, because Kathy Miller, she's the person behind the text, but, you also did help edit things pretty extensively. So it's we're kind of
absolutely.
able to
Yeah.
use them to see
Yeah.
how, all the pieces merge together, so to speak. So it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
All right. And then Trevor, what are some of your favorite genres to read or watch?
I hate to admit it on the podcast here, but I've only ever read 2 books in my lifetime.
That's why you're a podcast producer,
Yeah, exactly.
not a book
of course,
editor.
we had to read some books in high school and college and stuff like that, but the only 2 books I've ever read on my own are by the same author, Zach Bagans, the lead investigator of the Ghost Adventures crew. He wrote about his early days, and the book is about the book is called A Dark World, and he also wrote about multiple investigations that he did, like whenever he got into his prime, and that's called I Am Haunted, and just generally about the paranormal. So
So just the
Okay.
paranormal realm.
so the paranormal, if I were to venture out into other books, to be more like fantasy and medieval type things. So yeah, just like anything dark and paranormal. Horror.
You can tell we're related.
And I'd like to say for our audience, our listening audience, that while we have some specific things we're going to talk about in this special show, we are going to bounce around as subjects come up. One thing that just came up a minute ago is beta readers. And beta readers are simply people that read your book as you're writing it or right after you've written it to give you honest, objective feedback. So, some people think of family members as beta readers, or in the case of children's books, yeah, that was no problem. But of course, kids are brutally honest anyway, so they're going to give you an
Very
honest
true.
opinion.
Absolutely.
And to beta readers, that's my whole point. Be as brutal. To have a good beta reader is as brutally honest as a child.
Absolutely.
They need to be able to separate their emotions or personal feelings towards you, or and also you the writer need to be self-confident enough that you
Mhm.
can take whatever good-hearted criticism and feedback that they offer.
Yeah. And be
Um,
open to the criticism and willing
right.
to,
And
tweak your
To
book
yeah,
adapt.
and to know what
Yes.
parts to take out and what to leave in.
yeah.
Essentially.
And how many beta readers do we get when we're doing our books? I like to say at least 4 minimum.
Exactly.
You want to get, you want to, you want to balance it out gender wise, because your audience is both is women and men, and
Mhm.
also non-binary as well, or
Mhm.
what have you, the designation. But the point is, balance out the genders when
Mhm.
you're getting betas. And then another thing is make sure that you have at least one and maybe 2 beta readers that are genre specialists. So they're
Yes,
specialists in the
exactly.
genre you're writing in. And then just and make sure at least 1 or 2 of your beta readers reads everything. They're just bookworms.
Yeah, being
That
choosy
way they
about
can
your
give you,
beta. Yeah, being
yeah,
choosy about your beta readers is of
right.
just of equal
Hmm.
importance, really. But like Bob
Yeah.
was saying, be open to the criticism. In other words,
Exactly.
don't have your mother beta read your book because everything will be perfect. My
Yeah,
mom would always
or if
say,
it
"Well, it
isn't,
looks fine to me." I'm like,
if it isn't perfect, you'll be told to make it so.
exactly, very true, very true.
Um, yeah. So
If
speaking of
there was
beta
perfect
readers,
books out there,
no,
we would all be out of a job. So
yeah,
Good point. Good point.
to give you an idea of how beta readers work, you might have some friends, you might be in a writers group, or you
Mhm.
might know some people from the writers conference you were just at. That's why networking is so important, and we'll get into that in a minute. But like for instance, in my case, I'm getting started on a memoir called Of Running Mind, which is a kind of a combination of 25 years of competitive distance running and coaching
Mhm.
and neuroscience. And this isn't the time or place to really get into the story, but that's kind of what it's going to combine. So obviously for beta readers, I need to have people that run these distances and these races that also are really good readers, um, because I'm using specific terminology that they would know, and have to make sure that's right. So the reason why I'm currently in Rockford, Illinois, is I'm on my way. I'm in transit from northern Indiana, where last weekend I helped my friend David Nichols. He ran a 100-mile race. You heard that right. He ran the full 100
Yep.
miles.
that's
He did
extraordinary.
not sit down at all, and
Sounds like a breeze.
it took him
Getting.
27 hours, which
It's a
is
walk in the park.
2 hours faster than his goal time. So I beat his goal time by 2 hours.
It's
And
phenomenal.
then I was his pacer for one of the loops, which is 25 miles. So we had done this before 7 years ago in California at Western States, and I wanted a chapter 1 for my book.
Mhm.
When you're planning out chapter 1 of a book, you want something that just knocks your reader out. KOs them, makes them completely submissive to your book the rest of the way. That's the goal of chapter 1. And
Well
anyone that
said.
nuances it any further than that, well, you can nuance it, but that's the goal. The goal is to knock your reader over the head and to make them want to turn the page. So with that in mind, I was kind of thinking of a right stuff type chapter 1, where the person you think is going to be featured in chapter 1 isn't. And in the case of the right stuff, which was Tom Wolfe's book about the early space program, everyone thought Neil Armstrong, who walked first on the moon, was going to be the subject of chapter 1, but it wasn't. It was Pete Conrad, who was
Mhm.
the commander of Apollo 12 and the third person to walk on the moon. And that's because in the author's mind, Pete Conrad epitomized the whole, not only the professionalism and the skill and the science of being an astronaut, but also the cowboy attitude as a test pilot. So I wanted somebody that, I wanted to open the book with an experience that portrayed just the essence, the purest essence of
Mhm.
running, and nothing does that like a 100-mile race. So for chapter 1, I'm gonna take memories of 2014, melt them with what we just did this weekend, and then there's a few other pieces in there. But and since David is the subject of chapter 1, essentially, David Nichols, my friend, he
Yes.
and his wife Jessica, who's also an ultra runner, she's also a dissertation editor. So they're going to be my beta readers, my first 2. So that's an example of how to find beta readers. Find people that are in the know on the subject and
Mhm.
are into reading about it.
Exactly. Yeah, about that particular genre. And even sometimes it's good to bring in somebody that's not super familiar with that genre. Like with my book Verithian, it's medieval, but it tends to be, you know, on the dark side and have some heavy horror elements or whatever. And so, you know, I had three friends of mine that are really well versed in a lot of that. And you know, for example, I brought in, you know, one of them does read medieval fantasy very heavily, big into Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, etc. Read the book, you know, enjoyed it, you know, gave their 2 cents on it essentially. But I had another friend of mine from college who strictly just horror. I mean, as you know, as dark as you can get.
Yeah.
And I told him, you know, I wanted him to read it, you know, and he certainly had the experience to go through and give a really constructive criticism. And he was like, I don't even like this genre. I'm like, you need to read it. It's got that same aura about it. So, and he was probably, and this is someone who doesn't read fantasy, probably somebody who gave me more constructive criticism and really helped build upon the book than anybody else. So, you know, it's just kind of all about finding the right person that will really fit the genre of your book, and like I said, just offer the right,
Right.
give enough informative criticism about it, I guess. So, just an
Well,
example of
yeah,
it.
that's right. That's right. So, and yeah, so beta readers, it's really
Mm,
important to have them. I can tell within 5 pages if an author has has had beta readers look at their book before they send it to us for review.
exactly.
You can
Mm.
just tell. I mean, things are in there that shouldn't be in there and stuff like that.
So we had a little change in lineup. Trevor's now behind the camera where he belongs. So,
Yes.
just playing.
Well, that's one of the things that makes it so fun with us at Word Journeys. We all play around together a lot, and
About a little bit like family. We're almost too
Yeah.
comfortable now. So,
yeah, no, it's definitely a family vibe to the business, that's for
hmm,
sure, which makes it
Certainly.
really that's really satisfying for me. I really love that.
as do I.
Um, so over the years, we've been very blessed and fortunate at Word Journeys to work with hundreds of clients from all over the world,
Hmm.
and all types of different books. We've had, and you know, they've been self-published. They've been published by big major publishers. We've had New York Times bestsellers, Wall Street bestsellers,
Hmm.
a lot of Amazon bestsellers, and in addition to those clients, we've also worked with thousands of people that have come to our writing workshops and to to presentations at conferences. You know, not to mention the wonderful readers that have read all the books that we've been responsible for bringing out or editing or writing. So what I thought we'd do for this segment of our 25th anniversary show, Front Page Pass, is to talk about some of the best client or most memorable experiences over the years. And I've had the great one of I started out when I was 16. I worked at a newspaper for 8 years, and it was a daily, so I had to show up every day on deadline and work on deadline every single day, starting at 6 in the morning. And that was a discipline that you just can't buy it. You can't buy it in college. That's a discipline that has completely defined what's happened since. Just that daily writing, and so early on, very early on, when I was covering a sports event or something, a writer came up to me and he said two things. He said, "Great writers read great writing," and he
Mm.
also said to me, "Write about everything every day." So I took both of those pieces of advice to heart, and they became part of my soul. And for those reasons, I've had the incredible fortune of working with some of our cultural, uh, athletic, musical, um, political, and business icons that are now icons in our world, Hall of Famers, just
Hmm.
people that changed the game. People like George Lucas, like the late PGA Tour champion and US Open champion Payne Stewart, where I worked with the Apollo moonwalkers, all the astronauts that walked on the moon on a project. Marty Ballin, the late great singer for Jefferson Airplane and one of the original members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
Um, and through the magazine publishing group that we all work with, Innovative Properties Worldwide, which produces Innovation and Tech Today, Sustainability Today, and STEM Today, which are 3 magazines we're directly responsible for. We've interviewed a ton of great people, you know, Elon Musk, Mark Cuban,
Bear
uh,
Grylls.
Bear Grylls, yeah, and so
Brian
forth.
Scary.
Brian Scary from National Geographic, and
Hmm.
Valerie Taylor, who a
Yes.
lot of people
Yes.
don't know, A lot of people don't know that the team that shot all the live action footage for the movie Jaws was a man behind the camera and a woman luring out the sharks. And Valerie was the one that was out there with the great whites. And
There's a
Valerie,
Yes.
yeah, and she is a hoot. She is a great person to interview, and she's a legend. I mean, she's 85 years old, and most of Australia's shark protection policies are in place because of her. So those are the type of people we've had the pleasure to work with and interview. And I'm going to share a few experiences with them, but the one that stands out for me, I think, as far as where everything came together, which would be everything where Journeys does, all my writing, my book writing, and putting on a great promotion, which we also do, was the hometown signing for Crawl of Fame, which was 3 years ago tonight, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
It was in Carlsbad, California, which is my hometown. And it was with Julie Moss, who's the Ironman triathlon legend, who crashed and burned at the finish line in the 1982 Ironman that was aired on ABC Wide World of Sports. And she made triathlon a world sport at that moment. She became famous, the sport became famous, and she became one of the most iconic figures in American sports because of the courage it took to run, bike, and swim 146 total miles when you hadn't done anything longer than a marathon in your life beforehand. And so we had our hometown signing. Julie and I worked on the book together. It's her memoir, and I ghost wrote it. And it was at a running store in Carlsbad called the Running Center. And there were so many people there that we had to set up stuff outside for standing room only. And it was incredible. I mean, since it was our hometown, we had our own friends and family and fans and stuff come, but also some of our high school teachers showed up. And you know that you've done something in the world, or you've made a difference, or you've done, when a high school teacher shows up for something that you're doing 40 years later. And then on top of that, we had the pleasure of having the book introduced, and and the participation of Armin Katayan, who's a sports writer I grew up with in San Diego County, who later became a 7-time New York Times bestselling author, one of the top investigative sports journalists in the world, and also a correspondent on 60 Minutes for 10 years. So we all were super hungry, young little teenage and early 20s journalists with our goals back in the day. We all had high goals. No one wanted to stay in town. And Armin made it all the way. I mean, you can't go any higher in journalism really than 60 Minutes.
No, that's pretty much the pinnacle.
Not in this country. And so anyways, Armin had written a story on Julie Moss for the San Diego Union that got on the Ironman in 1982 that was so good that Sports Illustrated hired him on the spot, and then he and his wife, Dee Dee, flew to New York, and he started literally a week after the call. And then the rest is history. He's been in New York since, and just made one of the greatest sports journalism careers in sports journalism history. Anyway, so Armin, so we told him we were working on this book, and he offered to help, and one thing led to another, and he ended up showing up for our hometown signing. And he asked me ahead of time, can I make a couple of remarks? And I go, of course you can. Why don't you introduce Julie? And then Armin showed up, and he goes, well, I got something in mind. And I'm going, okay, this will be, I don't know what it is, but it'll be interesting.
Uh-oh.
And I said, so, would you like me to set 3 chairs up front? And he goes, yeah, for sure, 3 chairs. So we all go up there to sit down, and we had my dear childhood friend, Ken Kibo, who's an Emmy Award winning documentary filmmaker, and has done a few of my book trailers. He showed up, and he was already streaming on Facebook Live and shooting video and stuff. And anyways, so Armin got up there, and he proceeded to do a 60-minute long, 60-minute style interview with Julie and a little bit with me. And oh boy, the third question, there's a really dark moment in Julie's life that happened 12 years ago, and I'm not going to spoil the book for those who want to go buy it. But anyway, she went through a really dark night of the soul that she almost didn't come out of. And his third question was that question about that. And you know, and if you watch a 60 Minutes interview, they warm up on one or two questions, and then they go for it on the third question. So sure enough, and Julie, it was funny because Julie was between Armin and me, and Julie leans over and she said, "Did he really just ask that?" And I go, just remember, he's a 60 Minutes guy. He's going to ask it until you answer it.
Right.
I was gonna say, way to break the ice.
Yeah, absolutely.
He went barreling through.
Yeah.
You know, and it was we sold out of all the books in the store. It was a tremendous signing, and
Exactly.
it really, to me, it kind of showcased, you know, everything about being an author. I mean, we got to sign our books in front of our home crowd. People came to hear the message. They came because of the message. They came because one of the world's most inspirational athletes was on stage, and they and you know, and the store made a lot of money off of the book signing. We did good, and that, it was just a great book signing. It was what it's all about: total audience engagement, lots of questions, etc. And it was just a perfect book promotion, and it just. And, you know, and then after writing a book with someone, Julie, who's been my friend since we were 12, that was really special too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of one of those beautiful moments that come
Yes.
out of being in this industry to begin with, you know, just especially working with people of that caliber, and just, you know, how things can all come together in that manner. So we've certainly all had our fair share of those moments, for sure.
Yeah.
I have to say that one of the books I enjoyed the most was Jerry Reed's Sisters. She wrote an nonfiction memoir, kind of like a how-to book in a sense too, about graceful exits is the title of it. And it is exiting, you know, relationships, friendships, working relationships, the loss of a parent, a loved one, the loss of even a pet. And I found myself applying some of her techniques to my own life. So not only was it very insightful and very informational, but it was also very beneficial to me in my personal life. It's a funny story, but as we mentioned earlier, I'm a mother of twin daughters, and they found a worm outside and built a little nest for it. We turned around and walked off, only to turn back around and see a bird fly off with it. And I had to pull out the old Jerry's, you know, pets come and go. It's part
Graceful
of life,
exit.
you know, and so I mean, it's a funny scenario, yes, but it actually benefited me in a sense, and it gave me a sense of peace by being able to give them a sense of peace, you know. So I mean, she has been absolutely one of my favorites thus far to work with. Her book is great. It will be out soon. Alexa and Bob and myself all did, you know, a tremendous amount of work with her on this. So
Oh, she's brilliant.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't
great.
edit the book or anything. I did, you know, read it
Yes.
somewhat extensively and help work on a few
Yes.
design aspects and go over things. But it was informative, even
Yes.
just you know, working on it as closely as I did, I guess. I mean, it was
And I should announce that she's signing the contract right now with Roman Littlefield, which will be the
Absolutely.
publisher of Graceful Exits. And initial indications are that it'll be published in next summer. So
Awesome.
yeah. So anyways, I can say that now since she's signing on the
yeah,
dotted line.
finally.
Yay,
Yeah. So
Yeah, we're all
anyways,
very
so. And that's what happens. That's what happens at Word Journeys. I mean, that's what we really pride ourselves on with our editing, is we pride ourselves in being publish ready editors. And I spent, I've spent the last 23 years as a book editor. Plus I've written over 20 books now. Alexa's a soon to be published author, and she's also edited a bunch of books. And then Erin in the last 2 years has gotten good fast at editing.
Yes.
So so we have a team of editors, but most importantly, we have the experience where we've worked on both sides of the desk, both as a writer and as an editor. And that's really critical, because you need whoever you get for an editor for your book, they need to know how the publishers and the publishing houses think, and they need to know what they're looking for. Now, there's a lot of freelance editors that hang shingles, and a lot of them, they do very good work, and the vast majority do very good work. However, there are some that are charlatans and really aren't qualified for this. And what I like to tell authors is Google your editor that you're looking at, and the first sign that they're good is that they get named editor by name in book titles, in book covers.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
That is kind of a telltale.
Yes.
Yeah, and the
sign.
second sign, which is what I tell all authors to do when they're vetting a book editor, is ask the editor to tell you 3 to 5, 3 to 5 recent titles that they edited, and make sure to have them tell you something that's been published, at least, or some things that have been published. Because obviously, if I'm an editor and I'm touting edit or publish ready credentials, then I need to know how to get a book published. I need to get it to the point where it's publishable. So that's one thing we really pride ourselves in. We are able to make things publish ready, and the agents and the publishers and the writers and the conference directors that we work with all know that as well. So that's really, but make sure your editor, whoever it is knows how to has edited books that are published, so that they know how to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to that, another really favorite experience I had, and then I'll turn it over to Alexa because she's had several.
Don't ask me to choose.
was when I was working on Just to Add Water. Well, first of all, I should mention my own book, Voices, the novel. It's a rock and roll music novel, and of course, that was my thrill of my life to write that book, because I've been a music writer for many years, and so I baked in about 75 true stories to go along with all the fiction. But no one that doesn't know me knows of that, because there's a writing skill where you take true moments and then you just fictionalize them, and by doing that, you just put them in the flow of your narrative, your fictional narrative, put them in the persona of your character, and then you can put them in, and then no one ever knows. And it's just, it's a really neat way to add some zest to the narrative when you can't come up with any other ideas. And no one knows, they just don't know. Anyway, so for Just Add Water, Just Add Water is the story of Clay Marzo, who's one of the world's top surfers, who happens to be autistic, and he's quite autistic. I mean, he'd be middle level spectrum, in that when he's on land, he just has trouble doing the most basic things. And when he's in the water, however, he's an amphibious creature. I mean, I have never seen anybody in the water like this guy. And he surfs very acrobatically. He's powerful. He goes forward on the most on the scariest, most risky waves you can imagine, and he just does these amazing acrobatic maneuvers. So the experience that I had was I had to turn it into Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and I had a week to go, and I couldn't get page 1 right. I could not get the first page of the book right. Now, if you are a week away from turning in a book to a major publisher on a book contract, and you can't get page 1 right, let's just put it this way: Alexa and Aaron wouldn't have wanted to be around me that week. That was a high stress week. So I couldn't get it right. I couldn't find a metaphor or a simile, a way to compare how Clay Marzo surfs, because all the pro surfers, including the great multiple world champion Kelly Slater, told me, well, I can't describe how he surfs because I can't surf like him. And when they're saying stuff like that, they're just making him undefinable in their realm, surfing. I had to figure out how to, go to a comparison. So I was at the Computer Electronics showcase at CES with Innovative Properties Worldwide, the magazines we work with. I was there on business with them, and I had my laptop with me, and I'm carrying it around the Las Vegas Convention Center. And I went up to the Polar watch booth because I was doing a story on sports gear, and of course Polar watches are a great sports gear company, really preeminent brand. And then the pitch person who was there doing, talking to people and signing autographs and stuff was Shannon Miller, who's one of the greatest gymnasts in U.S. history. In fact, when Simone Biles won the bronze medal this year in Tokyo, she tied Shannon Miller's all-time record for medals won, 7 by a gymnast. So they've each won 7 medals, including many golds. Anyway, so Shannon was the star of the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. Well, the first thing, so I was talking to Shannon, and I knew her from back then just because, of working on magazine things then. And we're catching up and we're talking. I was telling her about, she asked me what books I'm working on. And I told her, I said, yeah, I'm just having a really hard time with page 1. I'm doing this book on this autistic surfer, and I can't describe how he surfs because his peers can't describe how he surfs.
Yes.
And she goes, well, what's it like? And I go, well, I can tell you it's super acrobatic. And, I could have sat there and rattled off a bunch of surf terminology, but she's a gymnast, so she wouldn't know it. So it would have been pointless.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so she said, well, can I see him surf? I said, well, as a matter of fact, you can. I have my laptop with me. So I opened up my laptop, put on a YouTube, and so she watched about 3 clips, and she goes, oh my God, he's just like one of us. She goes, he's amazing. He's just like one of us. So in page 1, it's like, aha, I got it.
Got it.
Light
bulb moment.
I wrote, he surfs like an Olympic champion. He surfs like an Olympic gymnast. That was my line. The way he surfs on waves is like an Olympic gymnast on their equipment.
Yeah.
On their equipment. So that was the line. And so it was perfect. It was perfect. It felt right. It was good. And a quick tip to writers: if page 1 doesn't feel right to the point where you close your eyes and it's vibrating, then do not send it.
Exactly. Then it's not. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not right.
Right, because if it doesn't feel that way to you, it's definitely not feeling that way to your editor. So, anyways, it felt that way to me, and I sent it off to Houghton Mifflin, and I sent the manuscript. We made the deadline. A week later, I get a call from the acquisition editor, and she goes, Bob, she goes, this is really great, except you can't use that. You can't use that simile in page 1 because that, she goes, that's hyperbole. Who's going to believe that? And I go, well, I just said, well, I can get a signed release from Shannon Miller stating that she gave that to me. I could do that. And she goes, Shannon Miller, the gymnast? And I go, yeah, Shannon Miller, the gymnast. She's the one that gave me that line. I showed her a YouTube of Clay surfing last week. And the editor goes, well, excuse me, that's awesome. So it stayed in.
Yeah,
that is so funny.
It stayed in.
Yeah, I would say so.
Which is another little tip thing I like telling writers is when you're working on a book, you might only be writing on it 3, 4, 5 hours a day, that's a pretty good number to pace to keep anyways, because if you keep writing on it 8 or 12 hours a day, you're going to burn out. But you might only be actually physically writing 3, 4, 5 hours a day, but you're thinking about it 24/7. That's the thing about writing books. If the good book writers, the good authors, the authors who put out good books, they're obsessed by their books. The story takes over, and you have to put the story on paper. And when you hear stories about writers having trouble living, just being imbalanced in their life or what have you, that's often what it comes to, because it's very hard to separate the creative mind space we're in, where there's no space and time really. You're just in your moment, to come out of that and then re-enter, which is what it is. You're re-entering another world.
Yeah, you get so immersed in the world that you've created, essentially, especially, if you're fiction writers. I mean, you kind of just get in that mindset where, it's hard to pull out of, essentially.
Yeah, and so the example I just gave of Shannon, I was thinking about the book. I mean, obviously, I was thinking actually in a quite anxiety-riddled way at the moment. That time, like, what am I gonna do? And then, but because I had, because it was on my mind, things happen when it's, when that radar is going, things are going to get things are going to get drawn to you and attracted to you. That's just how that's law of how supply and return works. So, so when we're writing books, it's really important to keep 24/7 focus. So Alexa, tell us about a couple of your.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you guys feel free to chime in as well, because I know you all have, I'm going to go with more current ones. So I know you guys have worked on these projects as far as the editing is concerned, at least. But 2 of my favorites from the past few years, I have to say, And you know me, I kind of like I like a bit of diversity, so I'm gonna go with the children's book, Kathy Miller, her Strollmuli series.
Series.
I've done four of her books, and we're still seeking a publisher for her. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the teachings. That she has in those books. Obviously, I got to illustrate, and really bring her book to life, essentially, in the characters to life. And that's always, as an artist, as someone who is an editor and an artist, it's always great for me to, come at it from behind the scenes and then, really just bring those stories and characters to life visually. That to me is that's just where it's at for me, and I really enjoy it. And I feel like, just her books are just really brilliant how they convey messages and to kids, and not only that, I mean, it's an entertaining read for adults as well. So it was really fun just illustrating that entire series. And I tend to use, doing books like that, I tend to use the classic mediums mixed with digital. So I'll start out, doing sketches, obviously, as most do, but it's usually pencil, ink, then go to digital. Very fun to do. Like I said, that's kind of my roots. That's where I really started out after I branched out of journalism. So it was a lot of fun to work with Kathy. She's a brilliant teacher. And I know you really enjoyed editing the book, so it was kind of fun to be a part of that process and bring that story to life.
Yeah.
My other one is Paul Bobrowski,
Yes.
who is
yes.
Yes.
It is a horror thriller, cyber tech. You can somewhat throw in there somewhat dystopian. I've enjoyed that one immensely because that's also, that's just the genre that I tend to like.
And that's the book called #Traceless, which will be out very shortly.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been a blast to work on, getting to manage a lot of the promotional stuff and getting to do the cover. I got to apply some new techniques, and Trevor can probably throw that up there. That one has probably been one of my most favorite covers I've done to date.
Yes.
And I got to apply some really interesting techniques and trends that, especially in 2021 for book covers, kind of really playing around with the text and adding more distortion, kind of having it more vague, and it being just as much about just how bold the text itself can be. Like, as you'll see on the cover, the face itself is really distorted and pixelated, and like you can see, you can look it up, that's like a major trend right now. So it was really fun for me to be able to kind of delve into that, and I think I feel like I really nailed it. He enjoyed it, and it was really fun, and it's been a great pleasure to work with Paul Bobrowski. And we can talk a bit about somebody important who has endorsed his book, Jim Buss, who is co-owner of the Lakers.
Well,
So that's also pretty cool.
Co-owner of the Lakers actually has actually been personally sponsoring Paul in the fulfillment of his writing dream. So this is actually, and this is kind of a new service that we're doing, where we're actually a few choice authors we're directly helping get published. Paul Bobrowski is one of them, and then his next book that's coming out is Gray's Crossing, which
talk about Gray's Crossing.
I mean, Traceless is really good, and he's going to get a lot of fans.
Absolutely.
And then Gray's Crossing's he knocked that one out of the park as well. And
Absolutely.
it's a whole different
I really feel
story.
like he's going to knock people off their feet with that book.
Yeah.
And it may, and with that book, we won't give too much away,
Yes.
About it, but help heal some of the division that's going on in this country. So it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Paul's a very versatile author to go from writing a horror / thriller to
Aaron, talk about the timing of that book a little.
Do what?
Aaron, talk about the timing of that book a little bit.
Gray's Crossing is set back in the Deep South in the time of, what's the word I'm looking for?
racial division.
Civil rights
headed.
movement.
And two unlikely people join forces and create a friendship that is something to be admired by both the whites in the community and the blacks in the community. It shows diversity. It shows that, that true sense of friendship and love that the two characters can have for each other defy all odds. It is something that once you start reading, it's going to be hard for you to put it down. It's probably going to bring tears to your eyes. It did me. And I just can't wait to see where this one goes.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's, and one thing that's really been, you bring up a thought, and that is, all these years of doing all these books, that to me is the most gratifying part of book editing, is being able not only to read these really good writers' stories and just see how their minds work, but also just read their imaginations and read what matters to them. But also to participate in the process of taking them from the condition they are in when we get them to making them polished books that end up on bookshelves. That's incredibly gratifying because,
Yes.
the thing about it is in every case, there are no exceptions. Editing a book it's a really awesome responsibility because we're literally taking someone's dream and helping them on the journey to have it come true. And it's really I don't know how you both feel about it, but for me it adds a secondary layer of personal responsibility to me to know that that's what I'm holding. I'm not just holding 100,000 words. I'm holding someone's dream.
Exactly.
Somebody's baby, essentially.
I mean,
and to be a part of that evolution is
Yeah,
just
Exactly.
that.
right.
Yeah, I mean, and from an editing standpoint, because I've done quite a bit of that over the years as well. It's just great to see, not only witness that evolution, especially when you help get them a publisher, but just to be a part of it. You really had a hand and played a role in, helping them hone their craft as an author and really bring that story to life. And a story that otherwise, it could be brilliant, but a story that otherwise wouldn't be told if it weren't for, us joining forces and being able to help.
And for me, seeing the manuscript evolve and become more, but also seeing the author themselves go through
Yes.
this process and seeing how they grow and transform through this process when we are, responsible for their baby essentially. Just seeing the growth within the author is also something that is extremely rewarding in book editing. See just the change that comes about with each person, each author that we work with. It's extremely rewarding to me.
Right.
Yeah, we could bring up a little bit about Brandon Pilcher. I feel like he's an author
Yes.
also that's really
Yes.
evolved. And you guys worked with
Yes.
as far as the editing is concerned. If you wanted to,
Yeah, Brandon. I'll get into that. Brandon's one of my
He's come a
favorite
long way.
authors.
Yes.
Yeah, well, he's one of my favorite authors I've ever worked with.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coaching high school cross country and track, I worked a lot with autistic athletes. Cross country happens to be the perfect team/individual sport for an autistic kid to participate in. And I had some training plus some background having worked with Clay Marzo on Just Add Water.
Yes.
But anyways, after I got done coaching, of course, it's obviously still editing, and Brandon was referred to us, and Brandon's autistic, and he's been on, he's quite on the spectrum, but he's a creative genius. He's a mastermind. I mean, he's a painter, he's an illustrator, he writes really fascinating, fabulous, out there stories. He's definitely into ancient history. But
Ancient Egyptian, yes.
working with him was really neat because when we first started, and this is a really good story because his book Priestess of the Lost Colony we released, it came out through Open Books Press in late April.
Yeah.
So it's available on newsstands and through bookstores, and it's available on Amazon right now. It's a great read about ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and the sacking of a colony and a brother and sister's efforts to try to get their enslaved countrymates back. That's essentially the story. But Brandon, when he came to me, he had never finished anything, and he had only written like a chapter overlay for what became Priestess. So because he's autistic, we had to work in an entirely different way. It had to be very structured, very goal oriented, very constantly getting from point A to B. So for that process, we worked on writing the book, and he wrote it over the course of about a year, and then we edited it, and then we published it. But he grew so much as a writer.
Absolutely.
He grew so much. He's so much better than he was, and that's all on him. That's not on us. All we can do is say, here's what you need to do. Go within yourself and find your elements, your own story, and
take those
bring
tools
this
and
out,
kind of run with them.
more dialogue, have them be more emotional, have them talk through the entirety of the problem in the dialogue. Those are the types of editing. That's the type of editing advice we can give, which is great advice, but we can't do it. You know, that's up to the author to do. And he just did a fabulous job, and he got rewarded for it. He got a publishing deal, and he published. So that was, you know, that was just really neat for me, working with
It
Brandon.
was for me. Yeah, it really was for me as well too. Because, like you said, I mean, he's a brilliant writer and he's an excellent illustrator. He comes up with some just absolutely gorgeous, you know, detailed character designs and everything else. So, you know, getting to collaborate with him on the cover itself was just so fun. It was kind of the meeting of the minds, you know, where he comes at it from just the purely artistic perspective, and then I kind of got to bring my knowledge, you know, as far as the publishing industry and making sure the cover was up to publishing standards, and getting to take like you know, certain design elements and piece it together with his really cool illustrations, and that was just so much fun for me. I had a great time working with him, and I feel like I even evolved, you know, with Brandon, so it was a lot of fun.
With Brandon personally, one of the best things that I can say about him is his descriptive details.
Yes.
The picture that is in his head, he transforms it into words and relays that picture into my brain
in detail.
In detail. He is absolutely a master at his skill when it comes to that. There's no crevice left unturned. You have a visual picture in your mind as you read the words that are leaping off the page at you. Brandon that is one of the things I enjoyed most, especially through the editing process with Brandon, was the amount of descriptive detail that he incorporates into his story to fill my mind with the visuals set back in a time where I didn't exist, you know, and to see just how great he is at that. I mean, that was one of the best visual pictures I've gotten reading a manuscript.
Absolutely.
Right. And the beauty about Brandon is he just doesn't write novels. He writes short stories too. So really, he's not only is Priestess available, but all of his short stories are available on Amazon too. That's Brandon Pilcher. A couple of other authors we worked with, and unfortunately we're already running out of time, is I'd like to just mention quickly are Chris Rydell, whose book Blood Money was published by Acorn Publishing about a year ago. And Chris, Chris was a medical testing lab CEO who was basically forced out of business by the two giants, Quest and LabCorp. And then he became a fraud fighter, another term for its whistleblower, because he noticed outrageous fraud going on in the way that these companies and others were undercharging doctors and overcharging state Medicare and Medicaid. So in other words, they were defrauding the government for billions of dollars, which is taxpayers, which is us. So anyways, I had the privilege of ghostwriting that book. It's a lot different than what we're used to working with. And, and then it came out a year ago, and that's just gotten rave reviews. And Chris is, he's just known in the world by having the guts to stand up to these guys. So that book was really fun. Another one, totally different. I mean, it's about as far off the beaten path as you can go from that is the adventures of Cosmo Lovejoy, EXP as an experience, by Patrick O'Brien, who, and this book, this is interesting. Now this is a story of a person's perseverance and determination to get a story they know needs to be told out there, because Patrick started working on this many years ago, and it's just this incredible story of a young man coming of age in a spiritual bohemian hippie way, but also growing as a man during the late 60s and early 70s. And he goes all over Mexico, New Mexico, California, Europe, the world. And that's the story. And it's just colorful. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's funny. It's poignant. It's got human tragedy in it. It's got human triumph in it. But Patrick, he kept working on it, putting it away, working on it and putting it away. And finally, about a year and a half ago, he got a hold of us and we were able to get him finished. And then Alexa designed the book cover along with, with Patrick's input. And then that book is out as well.
Yes.
And then we've got others that we're working on. We just signed a deal with Tammy Cutts Robertson to publish her poetry and art book. So that'll be fun. And then we have other projects that are just getting underway too, and then others that we're finishing. But that's been kind of really fun, to just, for all the years of working in this industry, and also all the different services we've always offered, marketing, PR, promotions, editing, ghostwriting, blah, 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 to have this book production kind of side that we do it very sparingly. We're like the tiny little boutique place, but it's just really fun.
Yeah, it truly is. And just the level of diversity, just within genres and clients and just the material itself is just, for me, is probably what has been some of the most fun aspects of working with Word Journeys, is just, being able to explore all those facets, all those genres and everything, because that's what I really enjoy. And that keeps anything, as far as work is concerned, from feeling, stale, I guess. It's just so everything is just so vibrant, when you have a new genre, a new author come across your desk. It's just
every day is a journey within Word Journeys.
There you go.
And I realize I'm speaking with incredible amount of bias here, because I really don't know anything as a professional other than writing, because I was 16 when I started, so this has literally been my life. But I can't tell you how many friends and great friends I've made all over the world from this career, from writing and just being part of it.
Exactly.
And networking and so forth. And it's like a family thing. I mean, Word Journeys, we're all going to the Southern California Writers Conference in San Diego in February, where we're going to be presenting Front Page Pass live broadcasts, interviewing different attendees and agents and publishers and stuff. And then Alexa and I will be doing presentations, and we'll be doing pitch sessions with writers, et cetera. But, I've been a part of that conference since 2010, and every time I show up, it's a family reunion. That's exactly what it feels like.
Absolutely.
It doesn't feel any different than a blood family reunion to me. And that, because writing and writers have become family. And that's, and the thing about it, and why I tell writers, it's so important to get out and do these public events once in a while, whether it's go to a signing, go to a reading, go to a writers conference, go to workshops, join a book group. And it's really important because, number one, we are isolated all the time when we're writing. We're constantly isolated. We're constantly alone. It's like, I don't know about you, the two of you, but I cannot write if I got a bunch of people around talking.
Oh, not at all.
It's a very solitary thing. And when when you're diving into a novel or diving into a nonfiction book, at the very least, it's going to take weeks of your life, and it's most certain, most likely taking months, and sometimes even takes years of your. That gets lonely too, because that becomes your life. That becomes your, and it can. You're not lonely when you're in the world of writing, but it feels lonely when you come out.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to network and leave the cave, so to speak.
So it's a process that can really mess with your mental health if you don't balance it out by doing some public stuff too.
Exactly.
Conferences are a great place to go because everybody that's there is in the same position. We're all those writers in a cave that are coming out of the cave for 3 days to, hang out at the bar, go to reading groups at the conference with each other, blah, blah, blah.
And it's all with like-minded people as well. I mean, it's like you said, it's just people who know the industry or are in this exact same position that you're in. So
and not only that, but you meet people and you network with them. And as writers, and one of the things we have to do that we didn't have to do 25 years ago is market our own work. So one of the things that we do is we constantly can network. So when I come out with a new book now, or when one of our clients comes out with a new book and I put the word around, many of the people that go to the Southern California Writers Conference that I've known the last 12 years will put it on their Facebook pages. They'll repost. And that's another value of going to these events. You network with people that are in the same boat you are, and you're able to you just learn, you just help each other out, you help each other succeed, because this is very much help each other succeed industry. It is, I mean, anybody that comes in thinking I'm your arch competitor, I'm gonna sell my books and you're not selling yours, well, that's the wrong industry for you.
It really
just
is. It's the wrong mentality to have.
it is. I mean, in
Completely.
the, in business, in providing author services and providing services, there's a little bit more competition for sure. But when it comes to actually supporting each other as authors,
Mhm.
doing our books, there shouldn't be anything but everybody scratching each
Support.
other's backs.
Yeah, agreed.
'Cause
Well said, Bob.
it's hard, yeah. Okay, just before we say goodbye, we wanted to bring Trevor back in front of
Reeled
the
him back
camera
in.
now. Yeah, we decided to bring him back in, didn't we, Alexa?
He's got a timeout. He can come back in
I'm still on the team.
now.
And by the way, to our listeners, this is what I mean by friendly banter that happens when you know each other as family, and
Yeah.
and also just it's part of the beauty of working together with a group that works so well.
Absolutely. A lot of good banter. So
So we're getting near the end of the show, and this has been a really special show, and I want to thank everybody that has on here on YouTube and all of the audio platforms that we've podcast on today.
absolutely.
Our website, for those of you, for everybody, whether wants to work with us to help you with your books or read our books or whatever needs you might have, is wordjourneysliterary.com. So www.wordjourneysliterary.com. And we did, there was one other piece I wanted to put in this special show, but I think we're going to do a series of 25-year shows during the course of the next year, because we're going to spend the next year just commemorating things in our history for 25 years. Because there's a number of different literary services businesses out there right now,
Absolutely.
but we for sure are one of the oldest. There's no question about it. And it's, and when you've been at something this long, you've earned a few stripes, and the stripes we've earned are the ability to tell stories from a perspective in the publishing industry. So the next time we do a special show, Alexa and I are gonna talk to you about 6 of the ways that publishing has changed in the last 25 years and why it matters a great deal to you, the author, because some of those changes have put more work on your desk. And we'll talk more about that and some of the things that means.
Yes, delve into the whole landscape of it. Exactly.
Yeah, things like marketing and having to do our own social. Well, social wasn't even around 25 years ago. Things like the many ways you can write your story now. You don't just have to write a print book. There's ebooks, there's audiobooks, there's blogs, there's websites specific to different genres. There's websites specific to short stories. So there's just many ways that you can do that.
And publishing standards have somewhat changed over the years, so we'll likely delve into some of that as
we'll
well.
keep everybody we'll keep everybody posted on everything that we do. We have a newsletter that's debuting November 1 through MailChimp, and we also have our podcast or front page pass that you can see every week. And we'll keep you updated through our newsletter and through our mailing list. And if you're interested in opting into our mailing list, go to info@wordjourneysliterary.com and we'll get you on the list. And you'll get that newsletter beginning of every month in your inbox.
Also, be sure to follow us on social media. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram in particular. I mean, we do quite a bit. We post pretty informative tidbits on there. Just interesting things about anything to do with the literary world. So, just to keep informed and stay up to date.
About our clients
And updates on events coming up and various things like that. And also just, certain niches within the publishing industry that, you don't often see too much. We tend to cover. So, because like Bob said, we've been around for so long. There's some things that we've picked up on, so obviously we're on there sharing them. So just be sure to visit us on those.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm looking forward to, we have a lot going on at Word Journeys, and I know Trevor and Alexa are getting ready to shoot Paul Bobrowski's book trailer for Gray's Crossing, which is the second book that Aaron gave us a quick description of. And that's just part of the fun of what Word Journeys has become. Every day is, and how many people can go to work every morning and say today is going to be a lot different than yesterday, whether the task we do is different, or the person we work with is different, or their material is different. And we literally get to go to work every day and say to, it's not going to be
Who
the same
knows?
as yesterday was.
It's a wild card.
What's today gonna bring?
Yeah, it can be a nice mellow day of reading manuscripts and editing, or it can be this wild thing with all sorts of,
That's how we like
and
it.
Zoom meetings and everything else. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, thank you guys for checking us
All right.
out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
All right.
Thank
we'll
you. And thank you once again to all of the clients, the authors, the agents, the
Yes.
publishers, the editors, the conference directors, and everybody that has helped make
Mhm.
my word journey in the last 45 years, but 25 of this company, so special, because you are my family.
Mhm.
You've been there for me so much, and I, since writing is my life, I don't even know what life would be without it. But I just want to thank everybody that's been a part of this journey so far, and really looking forward to taking the journey with everyone that comes in from this point forward.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
thank you all so very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Yes.
See ya.
and we will see you on the next edition of Front Page Pass.
See ya.
Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us at Front Page Pass, where we present everything from new titles to rocking interviews with best-selling authors and publishing experts, writing and editing tips, the latest on the bookshelves for readers, and live coverage of writers' festivals, conferences, and author signings. Our mission: to serve up the world in a thrilling, wonderful, and most adventurous new way.